Hello,
He's Oliver,
she's Lucy,
and you're listening to Anyway Movies,
the podcast of film fanatics and movie maniacs.
the podcast of discussions, debates, and occasional distractions as we talk about all things cinema.
If you like what you hear, be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on podcasting platforms.
Big shout out to my sister Molly for creating the logo and images for our podcast. Give her a follow on Instagram at _Molly_Joanne_.
Now that's all out of the way, dim the lights, turn the projector on, and let's start the episode. So, Lucy, are you ready for the biggest debate of all time?
No, not really. But
It's going to be told in history books. There are going to be songs made about it. This is going to be legendary.
I'm glad you think that, Oliver. Prepare to meet your doom.
Mount Doom.
Excuse me. So hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Anyway Movies. Me and Oliver are in a weirdly happy mood considering that we are both going to be beating each other to a pulp, but not physically because lockdown. Today we are going to be talking about the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit trilogy, the film trilogy, not the books, even though the books do exist and should be praised for being on the earth. Basically, we have very different opinions when it comes to these series of films. It appears to be that Oliver prefers Lord of the Rings
because it is the superior trilogy.
And I have the hugely unpopular opinion that the Hobbit trilogy is better than the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I've barely said this to anybody because I know that people will just not agree. And that is absolutely fine. Everyone's opinions are, you're all entitled to them and they are valid. But I don't think I actually have ever told anybody that I prefer The Hobbit. Ever. I'm just so scared.
I do have to admit, when you first told me, I was like,
It's kind of what gave us the idea of this podcast because you were so intrigued as to why it was my favourite.
I was, yeah, because I don't think the Hobbit trilogy is bad. I also particularly don't think it's good either. But just because I don't like it doesn't mean that it's, a quote-unquote bad trilogy. Doesn't mean it's not worthy of some praise. And it doesn't mean that you have bad taste. Because if these episodes so far have proven anything, it's that I think we both have pretty decent movie tastes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But it's just going to be interesting just to see what we like and what we don't like about both trilogies. So, first, we're going to talk about Lord of the Rings, what we like, what we don't like. Second, we're going to talk about The Hobbit, what we like, what we don't like. And then after that, we're going to do a special 1-minute debate section where each of us will spend a minute debating our preferred trilogy. And purely based on those debates alone, throwing all biases aside, we're going to decide once and for all what movie trilogy is the superior trilogy.
Yes, that was a really, really nice explanation. You didn't stutter once. Well done. So, do you want to begin by saying why Lord of the Rings is your favourite? Just start talking about it. Convince me.
Okay, I'm going to start with something that I know you will agree on. Something that I know you love. Something that we did talk about very briefly before we started recording. And that is Howard Shore, the composer. The movie score is second to none.
Yeah.
Legendary. It creates such an atmosphere for every single scene. And it's one of those it's one of those scores where in some scenes you kind of don't notice it because it just feels like it's already a part of the setting that you're watching. And so it's sort of an underlying thing. And then in other scenes, it sort of enhances it and it's very in your face, but in the best way. Howard Shore is just a musical genius. Enough said there. Okay,
Like when you hear the music, you can't really think of anything else but Lord of the Rings.
exactly.
It's very special.
Very special. And just the general story itself, like the whole story, starting from the first movie to the last, there's something very special in the idea that it's someone small and someone who could be considered very ordinary, not really special, someone that would be considered maybe more of a side character in other fantasy movies or fantasy stories,
Mm.
is the main protagonist, is the hero. Then again, there is a debate to say that there are multiple stories going on and multiple characters are their own heroes in their own stories. And I am a strong believer that Samwise Gamgee is like the hero. I mean, get you a friend like Sam is all I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely. Sam is so cute, bless him. That scene where Frodo's on the boat and then Sam can't swim, but he literally goes into the river to follow him.
That scene makes me laugh in the sense that Frodo's like, I'm going it alone. And then Sam's like, yes, you are alone, but I'm with you.
Yeah.
I think there's something quite relatable in the sense that I feel like Sam, in some aspects, is very childlike in the sense that he sees things very black and white, like Sauron, Gollum, the Ring, they're like bad, and like Frodo, Gandalf, and like Home in the Shire, they are good. And even throughout the journey, when Frodo is becoming affected by the ring and is becoming more aggressive, more violent, sort of losing himself, Sam never sees it as Frodo. He always sees it as the ring influencing Frodo. So, in that sense, I feel like that's quite childlike because it's ignoring the grey that's in the world.
Mm.
But then in other times, I feel like there's a maturity to Sam that not many other characters have, even the characters that are like human or like the elves.
He's very smart without seeming smart.
Yeah, and he sacrifices a lot and he puts his faith in people that he doesn't even know for the good of others, but mainly for Frodo. And I feel like that's quite a grown up thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I love Sam, is all I'm saying. And, and also, Sean Astin, he was the best character in Stranger Things season two.
He has a very good track record of being the favourite character of something.
Yeah, maybe that's why I don't like the Hobbit trilogy.
Yeah, because Sean Astin isn't in it.
If Sean Astin was in it, I would be like, oh, this is great. I love this. Like, of all the characters they brought back, the one character I would have loved. Uh,
I don't even think he was conceived during the Hobbit trilogy.
Neither was Aragorn, but like at the very end of the last movie, they like hint at him of the Hobbit.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
but I think he's supposed to be like 10 or 11 in like the official timeline at the end of the third Hobbit movie. But then they mention him as someone who fought in the battle. So
Oh,
so if they can do that, they could have brought Sam back. It's all I'm saying.
that is true.
And then obviously we can't talk about this trilogy without talking about Sir Ian McKellen.
Gandalf is a legend. I love him.
Like, if Sam wasn't in this movie, Gandalf would probably be my favorite character. He's just so he's sassy.
Yeah, he has sassy granddad energy.
We love a sassy granddad. A wizard is never late. He arrives precisely when he needs to. I was like, oh, I'm going to use that. Whenever I'm late somewhere, I'm like, I'm never late. I arrive when I need to. I arrive when I want to. Gandalf is who I aspire to be when I am 90 years old.
Yes, Oliver.
And obviously, the iconic, you shall not pass.
I saw a video ages ago and it was Ian McKellen doing this speech to all of these school kids. And he said to them something like, "Do you know what will happen if you don't revise? You shall not pass." And these kids go absolutely insane.
Ian McKellen, we do not deserve thee.
We honestly do not deserve him at all.
And like on top of just Ian McKellen, like Gandalf's whole story from being Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White, and sort of that change in character. Like when I first watched the first movie and Gandalf died, I knew that he was coming back
Oh,
because
yeah.
because the
I
movie
think we all knew that.
no, but I knew it because the movies have been out for like 20 whatever years.
Oh, right.
Probably more like 10. I'm getting ahead of myself. But just like the character progression between Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White, they both hold a very different weight, but they're both the same character. And it just makes sense. It's not like one character that's been written as two separate people made to be the same character.
Yeah.
It's the same character that so it dies and then gets reborn in a sense. I mean, that's going to change anyone, even a wizard. And the scene, like when he dies, or well, when he falls, and then that is the opening to the second movie, and you see that urgency from telling them to run, him falling, looking quite panicked and scared to him going straight into action. He's falling down a hole and he's fighting a giant fire demon. I was on the edge of my seats. Multiple seats, apparently.
It's such a good sequence. It's like a really strong opening.
Yeah. The one thing I do have to say about the Lord of the Rings trilogy is it's incredibly long.
Yes.
And I feel like for the first movie, it worked. Like it was very much sort of like a slow build, and it was very much this is the first act to a greater story. Because J.R.R. Tolkien was supposed to be just like one big book, but in three separate volumes. But it was supposed to essentially be one book. But I think because of like a paper shortage in World War One or World War Two, he had to split it up into three separate books. And so like it works as a first act. The second movie, at times I felt it was a bit tedious because I found it hard to get through the second movie. Not because it was bad, not because like the acting or anything, because everyone who was cast in the trilogy was like perfect, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
But it just
they couldn't have cast better people.
They couldn't, but it just kind of felt like it was jumping a little bit too much. And the third movie, I feel like jumps. If I feel like the third movie falls in between the first and the second one, like it doesn't flow as much as the first one did, but it's not as stop and starty as the second one. So that would be my main gripe with it. But with the power of online streaming, I can watch 10 minutes an episode, 10 minutes of a movie like every day until I finish it, never losing my place. Should probably also talk about Sean Bean in the first movie, like his character.
This is the role that subjected him to the Sean Bean dies in every single film he's in trope.
Literally.
It was from this movie onwards that he was just crowned Death King, I guess.
I mean, if it works.
Yeah, and it does work in Lord of the Rings. Like, I loved his character development.
Yeah.
That he was so obsessed with getting this ring, and then he ended up dying not for the ring but for Frodo in a sense, and I quite liked that juxtaposition.
One of my favorite parts of the first movie and my favorite Boromir part is when he's literally just dying, and his first instinct to say to Aragorn is, "They took the little people." He just did a whole battle being shot by arrows and getting back up and still fighting. And then on death's door, his first thought is, what about the hobbits? We need to save them.
Mm.
Character development, my friend. And I'm sure you'll talk about him in the Hobbit trilogy as well. But Andy Serkis as Gollum / Smeagol.
Yeah, it's such an iconic role. I know iconic is spread about now, but his performance in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings is truly iconic. Like, no, when people think of Gollum, they think of Andy Serkis. That is how iconic it is.
Should have won Oscar.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
It annoys me that he didn't win an Oscar because just essentially playing two characters in one. I mean, it's hard enough to play one character that's like Smeagol / Gollum, but playing two characters that are Smeagol and Gollum that are both very similar but very different.
It's just very difficult to do. I mean, I've watched behind the scenes clips of him doing the scenes, and he's in a massive mocap suit. He's probably sweating profusely, and he has to do all of these really physical movements and facial expressions while also remembering his lines. And Gollum's lines aren't very easy to remember because he keeps kind of being a hypocrite in a sense.
Yeah.
He keeps saying, yes, do this, no, do this.
Yeah, he keeps going back and forth and like.
Yeah, the fact that he remembers all of that while also being in such a strange environment with green screen and doing everything else with like his movements and stuff is just incredible. I can't believe he didn't get the Oscar.
A crime. I also like near the end of the third movie when like it comes about that Gollum and Smeagol maybe are more alike than you think, but it's just that Smeagol is a lot more timid than Gollum. So even though in the end they do want the same thing, they do want their ring back, Gollum is a lot more like, kill them, get it, go. And Smeagol's like, no, no, no. I don't want to kill anybody, but I do want it, but I don't want to hurt anyone, even though I kind of do. But like, that's a scary thing to do. I mean, Andy Serkis plays that a lot better than I did just now. I love this movie trilogy. I love it so damn much. And like, I can't even believe I've gotten this far without talking about the incredible female characters. Oh my god, the female cast, legendary. The female characters in this trilogy, they're so strong without having to be strong. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
This is back at a time when they were just strong characters who happened to be women, and it was done in a way that was so respectful to the character and respectful to the actors slash actresses playing them. One of my favorite scenes is in, I think it's in Return of the King, Eowyn, when she kills the Witch King, and he's like,
Yes.
"No man can kill me." She's like, "Well, I am no man." I was like, I was like,
Honestly.
"Oh my god, let me watch this again." That was badass. That was so freaking cool. I love her. I love Eowyn so much. I love her so much. She's such a badass, and she does it without losing any of that um, quote unquote weak feminine side. Because you don't need to lose that to be a strong female character. You don't need to lose that to be a strong woman. It's just there.
Exactly.
Oh, I love her so much. I love her so much. You have to stop me now because I feel like I'm going to go into a bigger rant than I need to.
So the overall basis is that you just love Lord of the Rings, and basically it's grown on you. I mean, how old were you when you watched it for the first time?
Uh, honestly, 20.
No,
I'm
stop
21
it.
now, but yeah, 20.
Really? I thought you'd watched it when you were like 10 or
No,
something.
I'd seen clips of it here and there, and I've obviously heard things about it because it's one of the most famous movie trilogies of all time.
Yeah.
My dad is a big fan of the movie trilogy. In the first episode of this podcast, I mentioned that on my wall I got two frames for Lord of the Rings, and there are these limited edition things that have actual film reel in them from the movies.
Yeah.
And I believe they were my granddad's, who gave them to my dad, who gave them to me. And before putting them up on my
Yeah.
wall, I was like, I should probably actually watch the trilogy for once. Because like everything I've seen or heard from it, I've liked, but I've just never gotten around to watching it. So I did. And it floored me how great it was. And I hated myself for taking so long to watch it. But I am so happy that I did. And I think the thing, despite every, or in spite of, is it in spite or despite everything I've said? Okay, everything
Despite.
I've said are the reasons I love this movie. I think the one thing that really pulls it all together is all the cast and the crew, like they flew and moved to New Zealand for like 2.5, 3 years to film the three movies back to back to back. And like the friendship and the closeness you feel for the characters feels so real because it was real. They essentially had to become a family because they were living together and working together for 3 years. And even if someone
Yeah.
didn't necessarily get on with someone else, you kind of stuck with them. So you just have to push past that and keep working together. And in terms of the Hobbit trilogy, I feel like that's not there.
Well, I'm about to prove you
Okay,
wrong.
bring on the Hobbit trilogy.
So, I just want to preface this by saying that I don't hate Lord of the Rings. I watched it for the first time last year and I liked them. I really enjoyed them. I thought they were great films. I watched the Hobbit trilogy first. I watched the Hobbit trilogy when I was about, I think I was about maybe 15, 16. And I really enjoyed them. And I have watched them more. So I think that kind of comes into why it is my favourite. Maybe if I watch Lord of the Rings more times, I'll probably feel the same as you do.
Yeah,
But I just love The Hobbit, and what that trilogy gave me is not what Lord of the Rings gave me, and I am about to explain why.
Okay.
So, one of my main loves about the Hobbit trilogy is Bilbo Baggins as a character. I think that he is a better protagonist than Frodo. Just my 2 cents. I think Frodo gets saved way too many times, and the last 2 movies is him just moaning. Whereas Bilbo, yes, there are times when he does get saved, but he is one of those characters that just gets his fingers dirty and just does it, even if it means that he might die. He doesn't whinge or moan, and when he does, you can sort of understand why he does, because he's in a certain predicament. And I just think Martin Freeman was just so perfect for the part. Just amazing casting. I want to follow this up so I did a little bit of research, and I found out who was considered to play Bilbo.
Okay.
And I want to read them out, because I wouldn't hate any of them, but the thought of them being Bilbo is just super weird to me. So I have 3 names. So there was Shia LaBeouf.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah. James McAvoy.
Wow.
And Daniel Radcliffe. They were all
Okay.
considered. They were all considered to play Bilbo. And honestly, I would not have hated any of them.
Out of those 3, I think I would have liked McAvoy.
Yeah, same.
Daniel Radcliffe, I understand because one, he's a great actor, but also he does look very similar.
To Elijah Wood, yeah. Yeah,
Shia
I
LaBeouf.
just read that and just thought that it needed saying that those were the actors that they had in mind before they cast Martin. And honestly, I think that they went with the right choice. I think Martin Freeman is so good in these films, like consistently good. And all of his scenes with individual people, like his scenes with Thorin, Smaug, Gollum, he has such a great dialogue with other actors.
I do agree there. I do think his scenes, especially with Gollum and with Smaug, are like big standouts in the trilogy.
Also, these films just are so much more fun to me. There's more jokes, there's more colour. Like, whenever I think of Lord of the Rings, and maybe this is because I've only watched it once, so I might look back and think, oh, right, maybe I was wrong. But there's just so much more colour in The Hobbit. When I think of Lord of the Rings, all I think is fields and beige stuff and greys. Whereas The Hobbit has loads of other worlds that are just so colourful, and even the Shire looks so much better for some reason. I don't know if this is because maybe technology and stuff, they might have like reinvented it to make it look brighter, but everything about these sets are just so much more appealing to the eye than, oh, look, a field, let's walk across it. Also, I have the very unpopular opinion that I think Desolation of Smaug is the best film out of all of them, like all of the Lord of the Rings, all of the Hobbits. I loved Desolation of Smaug. I think I've seen that one the most times. Mainly because of the whole aesthetic and just the way it all comes together to a halt, and the cliffhanger ending was really cool when Smaug escapes. It was such a good film, and yeah, I really think that was its magnum opus, so to speak. I just think there's so many incredible moments between certain characters. I loved the scene in Battle of Five Armies where, spoiler alert, Bard kills Smaug and he uses his son to sort of help straighten his bow. I like it literally gives me chills every time. And the scene where Bilbo meets Smaug for the first time and he's in that gold mine and then Smaug arises from beneath the gold and honestly, like some of these scenes in this movie are just so good and people don't talk about them enough. It's as if they don't exist. And then you have the barrel waterfall scene, which I think is from the first movie, which is so much fun. Like, even though they are probably moments away from imminent death, it is just weirdly so fun just to see them all in barrels just floating down this water river rapids sort of thing. Yeah, like it's just moments like that that just sort of bind each movie together and just create this nice whimsical feel to it. I mean, Lord of the Rings is a good film, but there's a lack of enjoyment in it for me. I feel very connected to the characters. They're all great characters, and I'm definitely with you on that. But I kind of want them to smile a bit, like have a little bit of fun. I know that in Lord of the Rings there are a few, jokes and stuff, and that's fine. They work really well. Like with Gimli and Legolas, the friendship of them all,
Yeah.
But I just don't think there's enough of that for me personally. And I think The Hobbit just gives it to us in spades. And I think that's probably why people don't like The Hobbit as much, because they might not be a fan of it being a bit more lighthearted. But personally, it really works for me. And honestly, this is all I have to say about it because, I don't really take this series too seriously. I just sort of see them as films. I'm just like, yeah, they're great films. And they all have their own, they have their own vibe, and that is absolutely fine. And different vibes work for different people. Lord of the Rings is a perfectly fine trilogy, but they just didn't overwhelm me. They didn't blow me away. And I think some of that has to do with the fact that I didn't grow up with it. And I watched The Hobbit first. Maybe that's the problem. But yeah, I would happily watch The Hobbit over The Lord of the Rings at any second of any day. I know that many people will be turning off the podcast at this point, but yeah, do you see where I'm coming from?
I do. And I don't particularly like the Hobbit trilogy, but I don't think it's a bad trilogy. And all the points you've made in defense of it, I would say, well, for most of them, I would agree. I think the humorous elements are done, not always done better, but in some ways are done better in the Hobbit trilogy. The standout scenes, like I said, for me are the particularly are the scenes when Bilbo is like having one-on-one talks with characters, particularly Gollum and Smaug. But I especially like the scene with Gollum when they're just throwing riddles at each other.
Yeah.
Like that scene, I feel like that scene is funny and it gives me the same kind of feel as the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but sort of it has a bit more of a modern feel to it in the sense of humor,
Yeah.
and I do like that.
I just overall just prefer it.
I mean, hey, your opinion is not wrong because it's an opinion.
It makes me wonder whether there are people out there who feel the exact same, because at the moment I just feel like I'm the only person who feels this way. Like I was looking up videos to maybe take out a few pointers and I could only find two that were like, this is why The Hobbit is better than Lord of the Rings. And every single other video that I found on The Hobbit was why The Hobbit sucks, why The Hobbit went wrong. And I was just like, guys, come on, give it some leeway. My God.
There's there's a YouTube video that I watched for The Hobbit because, in all honesty, I haven't fully seen the trilogy because I was just so bored. To put it plainly, I'm sure everyone who's listening already knows, but The Hobbit is like a 300-page book, and it could have easily been one of the better, if not potentially a favourite, like the best movie in relation to The Lord of the Rings, if it was just one movie.
Yeah, I mean, that was another point that I was going to say. I mean, I am not coming on this podcast and saying that The Hobbit is a perfect trilogy. It really isn't. It has its flaws, and I completely understand why you got bored of it. I can see why people would think that it isn't as good as Lord of the Rings. I completely get it. And one of the things that I have with it is that it was so unnecessary to make it 3 movies, and I completely get that. And they added stuff in that people weren't happy with. I haven't read any of the books, so I don't have any relation to the books. I don't know what happens in them, so I wouldn't know what they added and what they didn't. But yeah, I think it was very unnecessary to turn one book into 3 movies. I think they could have easily, like you said, just put it in one movie and it would have been incredible.
But it's just like there was so much potential,
Mm.
and there are some good payoffs in it.
Yeah, sure.
And it is essentially a prequel to The Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit is supposed to be about it's supposed to be Bilbo Baggins' story. It takes forever to get started. Like the first movie is called The Unexpected Journey or An Unexpected Journey, but the main bulk of the journey isn't until the second movie.
Yeah.
And
Okay, I'll give you that.
and for a trilogy that's supposed to focus on a story purely about Bilbo, he kind of gets lost within the third movie. He's kind of just there. Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah, I don't think Bilbo is as pivotal to the storyline as much as Frodo was to his.
But the thing is, he should have been, and in the books, I'm pretty sure he is.
Yeah,
Like the
yeah.
only reason I do know, because like I said, I haven't finished the Hobbit trilogy, but I do know the main story of the Hobbit because obviously research for this podcast. But there's also like an animated Hobbit movie that
Oh,
um which I watched when I was, I want to say 9, 10 years old. So like this was the first thing in relation to the Lord of the Rings that I'd have ever watched, and it was for a class project or something. I can't remember exactly, but it was just a short animated movie, and it was just fun. And the song elements that are in the trilogy were in there. The main story beats that you get in the trilogy are in this one animated movie,
mm.
and it focuses more on Bilbo than it does the other characters. And doing research for this podcast and finding out that that kind of strayed among a lot of things strayed. It just, as a fan of the original trilogy, it just kind of makes me feel a bit disappointed, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I mean, all of the things that you've just said, I completely understand why you said them. And honestly, I think that if I had read the books and stuff, maybe I would feel different. But yeah, it's just one of those things.
Well, like like a nostalgia element is probably part of it, but also think about the time. If you first watched The Hobbit, when did you watch the trilogy altogether, or did you watch it as the movies came out?
I watched them every week because it was at this point where the Battle of Five Armies DVD had come out, and so we got all 3 of them. Molly, my sister, had just finished watching the original Lord of the Rings, and she was like, "Oh yeah, The Hobbit. Do you want to watch The Hobbit?" So then every single week for 3 weeks we watched The Hobbit, and I'd never seen Lord of the Rings, but Molly said that it was a prequel, so I didn't really have to know anything about Lord of the Rings in order to watch them. So that's why I watched them. And then Lord of the Rings last year, I watched in one day.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
dedication.
it was one of those days where lockdown was just getting to us, and we were like, do you know what? Let's just watch all three Lord of the Rings. We sat and ate snacks the entire day. It was really nice. It was lovely.
I was going to say you didn't invite me, but lockdown.
Yeah, I couldn't invite you. We would both be arrested.
Well, not arrested, just fined.
Just fine, but we're both broke, so.
Oh, thanks for reminding me.
So, do you want to move over to the 1 minute debate?
Okay, 1 minute debate time.
Do you want to go first?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. So, in front of me, I have a stopwatch. And I promise I will be fair. I will give myself a minute, no more. So, like I said at the start, we're just going to basically condense why we prefer our preferred trilogies into 1 minute. If there's anything else you want to add, maybe that comes up. And then we'll just decide who we think gave the better argument. And whoever did that wins the debate. And that is the best movie trilogy. Okay?
Got it.
Okay. My time starts now. Okay, so the reason why Lord of the Rings is better than The Hobbit is, first of all, the score is iconic. I know that the same person did the score for both trilogies, but the Lord of the Rings score is just iconic. You hear it, you know it's Lord of the Rings. It gives you a feel that The Hobbit just doesn't. The family bonds and the friendship that were made in real life crossed over to the screen, and you could really see it and feel it, and that really helped connect to the characters. Strong representation for characters in terms of gender, size, the idea that even the smallest person who could be the most insignificant person to you could still be a hero. Also, the sound design, can I just say, the ring rates terrify me. That sound design is just incredible. I absolutely cannot stop loving it. Okay, my time's up.
Incredible.
God, I was run. I felt like I was trying to fit so much in. It's 1 minute is not as long as I thought it would be. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Your time starts now.
So, The Hobbit is better than Lord of the Rings because, firstly, it has a better protagonist in Bilbo Baggins. Bilbo gets his hands dirty and actually does stuff rather than moan like Frodo does. Desolation of Smaug is the best film in the entire series. I don't even care. The sets are more colourful and fun. The jokes are more witty and incredible. The characters are more distinct and very fleshed out. Bilbo's friendship with Thorin, well, that turns into hatred and then back into friendship, is just so good. I can't get enough of it. Everybody is perfect for their parts. Toriel, badass. Legolas, badass. Just everybody is amazing. So good. Notes. I love certain scenes, and I just think that it's just fun. It's just fun to watch. You don't have to worry about it too much. There we go. I was really, really struggling towards the end there because I feel like I've already explained what I've just said. But
you were doing well.
I just need to condense it into a minute.
You're doing really well.
You're right, a minute is not a lot of time.
Okay. So, listeners, you can obviously decide purely based on the debate who you think wins, but I think I know who I think wins. Do you think you know?
Yeah.
Okay. I just hope it's the same person. I think you won.
Really? I thought you won.
Well, your debate included a lot more. Your argument, rather, included like more points. You spoke a little bit more about the characters. You included Legolas, which I neglected to mention.
And I'm sorry to say this, Oliver, you've also neglected two other characters, Merry and Pippin. Where were they?
Merry and Pippin, as much as I love them, were not important enough to fit in my 1 minute, okay?
Yeah, now thinking about it, even though I struggled towards the end, I think I got a lot more out there. I mean, your argument was very good. I mean, I was totally on board with having you as the winner because I think that what you say is very valid, and obviously everybody agrees with you, and you are probably right. And it's like I said before, I think if I watch Lord of the Rings a couple more times, I'll probably feel the exact same way. Just at this moment in time, I do not.
Hey, this episode will probably bring out the Hobbit fans, and you'll finally find your community.
I have found my people.
They are out there. If you,
I hope they are.
so yeah, I begrudgingly accept defeat. I do think you posed the better argument, so well done.
Yay! I won something.
Took you what, nearly 22 years, but wow.
Right, so I think that concludes today's episode of Anyway Movies. I've really enjoyed this. I think we need to do this again. We need to try and find something else that we really disagree on and then just have it out.
So I keep wanting to say viewers, but it is more listeners. If listeners have other movie trilogies or movie debate topics that you would like us to debate, if you think we're good enough to do so, then please, if you're on YouTube, leave them in the comments. Leave them when you leave us a review, all that good stuff. And also, let us know which movie trilogy you prefer and why.
Yes, please do. Please interact with us. Let us know if we're doing a good job, because
Like, this is just learning as you go, really.
Yeah, we are completely winging it at this point. I mean, it's been so fun at the minute, and we have so many good ideas. I know I keep saying it every week, but we have so many good ideas.
Yeah, we do. We're not too shabby, if I do say so myself.
We aren't, no. So yeah, we are on Spotify, YouTube, and basically all of the podcasting platforms you can think of, like Radio Public, Pocket Casts, Breaker, all of that sort of stuff. And you can find us all on there. Follow us, subscribe to us, and please, again, let us know what you think, and if you want us to talk about anything, any movies that you think that we might be completely ignoring, just let us know. Like, Lucy, Oliver, talk about this.
Next week we have a very special episode, don't we, Lucy?
We
say this about every episode, but that's because every episode is special.
Honestly, I have loved every single episode we've ever done. Like, there hasn't been a single episode where I've thought, this is really crap. Like, every single episode is a special episode to me. So thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.